Sheikh Uthman Ibn Farooq. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
It's a pleasure having you visiting.
Good to be here in
Scotland.
Beautiful Scotland.
One of the main topics that affects sisters and young brothers today, and that is preparation for marriage. In regards to the question, what qualities and attributes would a woman need to look for in a man when trying to get married?
Great question. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala rasulillah. So no doubt finding the right spouse is one of the most important decisions a person could make in their life. So first thing, nobody should rush into it. We don't believe in dating because dating doesn't really show the reality of a person. When somebody's dating, they put on a fake image. Nobody goes on a date and goes, hey, you know what? I'm a horrible person. I don't pay my bills and I snore at night. Nobody does that, right? But we do believe in getting to know somebody's personality. And how can you do that? Not just through them. You can get to know through the people around them. So traditionally, you would have parents that would meet the other parents. They would get to know the community. You would speak to the imams and find out how the person's religion was and so on. Nowadays, that is a little bit difficult. But on the positive of technology, a lot of times you can tell a lot about somebody through their social media. If they have pictures of themselves drinking and partying or just showing off cars or money, then that's probably not the kind of man you want to get married to. And the other hand, if you're trying to marry a sister and she has, pictures of herself in vacation in bikinis, then that's probably not the sister you want to get married to. So be careful first off, get to know who you're going to get married to. Secondly, as far as a sister looking for qualities in a man, of course saying that they should be religious, right? But what does that really mean? The 5-time prayers is a base. There is nothing lower than that. That is your absolute bottom requirement. Obviously being Muslim, but then if a man doesn't pray 5 times a day, you do not want to marry that man. If he doesn't and he's willing to, maybe you can tell him, look, if you want to get married, I want to see you on your prayer. You can guide him, inshallah, and be a source of him getting there. But that's the minimum. You must have 5-time prayers. Past that, the obligations, make sure somebody who fasts in Ramadan, pays their zakat, things like that. A lot of people don't realize it's very important to not just have somebody who prays and fasts, but it's also somebody who's going to be fulfilling the responsibilities that Allah has put on a man. For example, a man who will earn for their family. You don't want to marry a man, then he's going to be like sitting at home on welfare or social security or whatever you want to call it, and then expect you to go out to work and take care of the house. That's not somebody you want to marry. You want to marry somebody who's going to bring home the halal food on the table. Rizq is in the hands of Allah, but we're looking at qualifications, right? I'm not saying he's got to be like a millionaire or a baller, but he does need to be able to provide for his family. We see a lot of sisters get married to brothers, and even if they're praying and fasting, but they're not taking care of the kids, they're not taking care of the family, they're not bringing home the money, so sisters get put in a very harsh situation. So that's one thing you should look at. Secondly, from the aspect of manlyhood, somebody who can protect her family, his family, who can protect her and the children. Some men, unfortunately, nowadays, I don't know if it's in the water or what it is, they're very feminine. They're not willing to stand up for their family. You see Muslim men with their nail polish done and eyebrows plucked and all kinds of little feminine things. That's not somebody who can defend his family. And even if we live in a society where we have the police and things, but that doesn't mean that, if you're on vacation, you're walking down the alley and somebody comes and attacks you, by the time you call police and they come, a lot can happen. So you do want to look for a man who's strong. Okay? Third manliness quality that I would suggest for sisters to look for in a man is somebody who's going to be a good example for the children. So, somebody, of course, we don't expect perfection. I just want to be clear because then some people go too far. But somebody who you would think that in the future your kids can look up to. Somebody with high ambitions, somebody who aims high, somebody who has goals in life, to be a good role model for the children that you're going to have together. somebody who can teach you and develop you as a person. So if you're marrying a man, you want to marry somebody who's knowledgeable enough that they can grow you as a person. So those are all things that I think a sister should look for in a brother. Now, if a brother is trying to get married to a sister, obviously he should look at her religiousness, because as we mentioned, that's the base, and her 5 times salah. But also, since hijab is a fard, it's an obligation on the woman, I think that should be a minimum, right? It should be required. Now again, if a sister is not on the hijab, but she's willing to, then he can definitely help her and be a guide for her, as you mentioned, the sister being a guide for the man, and say, look, we want to get married, but I want to live by the Quran, Sunnah, and Islamic way. So we need to make sure that you are willing that before we get married to go put on the hijab and for the sake of Allah, but live by that. When a man is looking for a woman to marry, another thing he needs to look at is somebody who can be a comfort, a support for him, somebody who can encourage him in the good that he's doing and make sure that if he starts slipping, she can bring him back to the right path. Like Khadija radiallahu anha was the greatest support for Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, as he would remember her and say that she supported his da'wah, she believed in him when nobody else did, she supported him physically, financially, emotionally. If it wasn't for that element, the da'wah would have been very difficult for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And I can tell you personally, when you go out and give da'wah and you face all kinds of haters and hardships and all those kinds of things, without good support at home from your mother, from your wife, from your daughters, from the females in your family that can really emotionally support you, it's impossible. So it's very, very important to have that element. Also to look for a sister that is going to be a great mother, and is somebody who can be nurturing for the children, that the children can find good examples in as a mother, and somebody who can keep the family together, somebody who will keep the household functioning. And we say the women of this ummah are the most important element of the da'wah, because they are the ones that keep society together, families together, households together. It is the love of a mother that keeps that going. So looking for somebody who can do that, who can raise children well, who can teach the children right from wrong, and really be a loving, nurturing spouse in that relationship.
SubhanAllah. Thank you so much, Sheikh. That was a beautiful insight. That was like a lot more than I was expecting to get from the question. So that's beautiful, and I don't think I've seen it being covered enough by people of knowledge, and it's extremely important. Just following up from that question, I wanted to ask that there's some men, their actions, such as their salah, are intact. Their generosity is intact when it comes to the people and everything, but regardless of this characteristic, they're still extremely bad with their wives, as in they do not know how to handle their wife in the way that she should be handled. Is there any advice for the sisters in regards to if they have a husband like this, that it's difficult for them to?
For sure. There are brothers, may Allah forgive us, that sometimes are not as kind and considerate and understanding of their wives as they should be. Having said that, a lot of wives go at it the wrong way as well, just coming to a brother and being like, to her husband and being like, oh, look at this ayah that tells you to be good to women, that's a little condescending, because then is she fulfilling the rights of a wife? Is she perfectly, there in the Quran Hadith as well? So my advice first and foremost to sisters in that situation would be, is evaluate yourself, right? A lot of times it might not be that the brother's just a bad person, it might be that you rub him the wrong way, right? So evaluate how are you being loving towards the brother? Are you being supportive? Are you being humble towards him? And maybe that's what he needs to then be humble and loving and supporting back to you. So that's the first thing. Now maybe the sister maybe she's doing everything right and he's still not being well. She can definitely try to, with hikmah, with wisdom, show him Islamic evidences of how a husband should be with his wife, loving and supportive and so on. And if that doesn't really work, she can definitely reach out to those that are close to her. Like, for example, maybe her mother-in-law. Sometimes that's not always a good relationship, but many times it is. Or her father-in-law, or even within the constraints of the hijab, the brother-in-law, or maybe somebody else, or maybe your husband's sister or sister-in-law, and say, look, I really love him, he's good Islamically, but this is the kind of thing, how can we work without causing more fitna in the family?
Sure.
Not going outside the family, but if it gets to a point where maybe he's abusive and so on, then yes, you can reach out to the imam and get somebody to kind of mitigate and help you. But what I have noticed in life is a lot of times it's about how you interact with somebody, right? Sometimes when you are kind of rough with somebody, especially men, they'll be rougher back. But if you're soft and loving with them, they will be softer and more loving back. Sometimes you maybe just need to kind of revamp the relationship, be like, okay, you know what, this is not working in this way. Why don't we try, getting involved in some Islamic activities together and having more things in common, and, really look at the betterment of the children and so on. So all those aspects can be taken into consideration when trying to fix such a situation.
Last question, just to follow up this segment, which is something that's a big concern to the brothers. So I tried to bring one that's more of a concern for the sisters, that I feel that is, shaky, especially when a brother's praying 5 times a day, but still not representing the way he should be in regards to the Prophet ﷺ as the best example. So vice versa.
But that's the thing, right? Like, if a woman wants the man to be as the Prophet ﷺ was to Aisha radiallahu anha, she needs to see, am I like Aisha radiallahu anha was to Rasulullah sallallahu, right? So
that is the follow-up question on the line. So it's like, how important is the hijab? And let's say, for example, you got married at a time you wasn't practicing, which a lot of brothers and sisters do, especially nowadays. I feel like it's way more common. One of them decides to start practicing Islam. Mainly the man, I would say, that really pushes for the change, but sometimes it's the sisters.
Yes.
Now, if the man becomes more practicing and starts, applying the sunnah, which is wajib, the bed and stuff, and now he wants his wife to start implementing the hijab,
which is fun.
Which is fine also.
Yeah.
So, because now he's in a situation where he didn't apply the pressure for her to practice and didn't implement it.
Well, you shouldn't have to. Hijab is really got nothing to do with your husband, right? The husband's job should just be to educate, right? So if a brother wasn't practicing, may Allah forgive him, and he starts practicing, Allah protect him, and his wife wasn't practicing, may Allah forgive her, then he needs to educate her that she as a Muslimah should be doing this anyway. May Allah protect her. So it's not about telling her, hey, you gotta wear hijab because you're my wife. No, even if you're not my wife, you still gotta wear hijab, right? That is to connect her with her Creator. And for the sisters, it's got nothing to do with your husband. This has to do with you and Allah and being known as an honorable woman. So I think it's very important that if your husband was off the religion, say alhamdulillah that he got on it. There's nothing good that comes out with him being off the religion. Trust me, men by nature, unfortunately, are not great husbands. It is the nurture that really kind of helps them be better. If you look at animalistic behaviors in males, especially non-Muslims, it's very bad. But when you control your desires and you know that Allah sees you everywhere and Allah is going to hold you accountable, that's when you can be a good husband, a good father, a good brother, a good son, all of that. So if your husband's coming to religion, great, encourage it, support it. And you wearing the hijab should be an honor for you. You should be happy about it, because now your beauty is protected for your husband, for your household, for your family, and not something on the street for every Tom, Dick, and Harry to be, lusting and then possibly utilizing that situation to then physically harm you and so on, as we see a lot in society today. So I think the education there is that it's not that the brother has to now force the hijab on her. Really, he just needs to educate her, and every Muslim woman should wear the hijab because your Allah, your Creator, your Designer has ordered it. I don't keep a beard just because it's a fashion statement, even though I know it looks good. But that's not why I keep a beard. I keep a beard because the Prophet ordered it. Now, whether I'm married or not married or employed, doesn't really matter. It's got nothing to do with the beard. That's what I do. And that's the same thing with our sisters. They should be on the hijab no matter what.
So Sheikh, this thing has been a question for me from like ever since I started praying. I know there's more beneficial things that we should be focusing on in our day-to-day lives. However, it's something that's always concerned me, and it's the journey of the soul from the beginning of creation till the time we meet Allah and we resurrect. Can you elaborate a bit on this journey?
And it's a very important subject because that is our journey. That is the essence of our creation. So the arwah, as the Prophet ﷺ has told us, the souls were created, and we were in a place called alam al-arwah, the place of the souls. So you had no physical body, but you had your souls. And the Prophet ﷺ in authentic hadith even told us that souls met each other. So meaning they had an ability of being conscious. And they met them at that time. That's why sometimes when you meet somebody, immediately you like them, or you see something and you immediately like them, because it's possible that your souls have already met. That was one stage of existence, when we were souls. Then we come into this world. The journey into this world begins with a life separate from the life you're living right now, which is the life of the womb of the mother, in the rahm. And this is where the soul gets attached after a period of time during the pregnancy with the physical body. The angel blows the soul into the physical body. So first is just, male and female reproductive liquids, and then they meet, and then, as you know, the egg gets fertilized. As the fetus develops, at a point in time, as the hadith mentions, the soul is blown into the fetus, and now that's a human being with a soul. And while the woman is still pregnant, the soul is there. Now, as the life of the womb of the mother grows, the soul and the body bond, right? Then we die from that life, meaning that's 9 months of life is finished. We are born from there, we move on, we pass on to the worldly life from this dunya, like this world.
Sheikh, who blows into who blows the soul?
The angels do.
The angels.
Yeah, they're angels whose job is to blow souls into fetuses. They're angels like Malik al-Maut, whose job is to take the souls from the body. We'll talk about that inshallah. So now, your soul enters the next phase, right? So there was this time when it was just a soul, when it was created. And then there was a time when it was in the womb with the body. Now the body and the soul are born into this earthly life. So this isn't the beginning. This is now a continuation in this cycle that we were going through. Here, in this worldly life then, you walk around, you have a physical body, a jasad, badan, body, and you have a ruh, and you have a soul. And it's connected. And that's what makes you tick, that's what makes you lie, that's what makes you walk around, that's what makes you different from a dead body. If you've ever seen a dead body, it has eyes but it can't see, it has ears but it can't hear, it has a brain but it can't think, it has a nose but it can't smell. What's the difference? There's no soul. It's a spark, as people say. In this world, then you walk around. Your soul is there. Now you have to feed your soul, right? Just like you feed your body. Like you're drinking tea, this is giving nutrition to your body. The food of the soul is spirituality, right? That's why many people, their souls, even though it's there, but they're dead. They don't have that strength to do good, to move forward in things. You just see them lethargic, you see them weak because they have not fed their souls. The people who are sinful and the people who are people who do kufr and shirk, their souls are dead. Even though their body's alive, but the soul's so weak that they cannot do right things, they cannot stop themselves from evil. Some people, their addictions and so on. On the other hand, those that learn to curtail their desires, and they feed the soul with spirituality, with prayer, with fasting, giving sadaqah, with reading Quran, their souls become strong, nourished. Just like your body, when you work out and you eat healthy, your body's healthy. You don't eat healthy, you eat junk, you eat horrible things, you don't work out, your body starts to deteriorate. The same thing is true for your soul. But the ghada, or the nutrition for the soul is the Islamic ibadat, the worships, whether it's through hajj or whatever else, in qital and fasting and all the good things that you do, they nourish the soul. In this life, the end of it is where you disconnect again. Right? So now Malak al-Maut comes, the angel of death comes with other angels, and they rip the soul out. Now for the believer, this is something that Allah makes easy, but it's still difficult. I mean, this just like when you're born into this life, it's not an easy transition. Right? Now, there are easy pregnancies, there are difficult pregnancies, and there are natural births, and then there's cesareans. So it is different, but none of it's easy. I mean, when you see a child being born, you have 2 children of your own, so you know. I mean, the face is squunched up. I mean, you know, when a child's first born, they don't look that nice, and people always like, take pictures. Like, nah, let's just wait a couple of days. You know, they look like aliens. The nose is pushed in, the ears, because they have to go through this, and it's difficult. They're crying. Now, some childbirths are easier, and some are more difficult, right? Now, death is the same way. Death is difficult for everybody. There is no really easy way out, but it is easier for the believer and for the pious person, and it is very difficult for the kafir and the fasiq and the fajr, the sinful, rebellious, murdering, not repenting kind of person will have a very difficult life. Even if you don't see it at their point of death, it is very difficult. And this you can find in Surah Naziyat, وَالنَّازِيَاتِ غَرْقًا وَالنَّاشِطَاتِ نَشْطًا. Gharqa here is talking about, Naziyat is reference to the malaika. When you talk about gharqa, this is ripping the soul from the disbeliever and the sinful person, and how it destroys them. And nashta is the taking of the soul from the believers easily, mildly, right? So this is the point where the soul now disconnects with the body again. Now, both the soul and the body are buried in the grave. Okay? And this is called Alim al-Barzakh. Okay? So Alim al-Arwah was there, the life of the womb was there, and the life of this dunya is here. Then we enter Alim al-Barzakh, the next existent plane, or plane of existence, right? Here, the soul is there, and the body is there, but there is a slight disconnect in the sense that the body will deteriorate. Right? So your physical body will deteriorate until nothing is left of you except a small piece of the tailbone. And this is very interesting because Rasulullah mentions a hadith, there are ayat that refers to this, but at that time they could not have understood this. But you will understand when I tell you now. Then Allah will recreate you from there. Right? Now the concept of cloning, something that I think was developed in Scotland actually, it shows us how just from a small piece of DNA you can be recreated. Like we can clone somebody from your DNA. Now Allah obviously is qadir over all of that, but the Sahaba could not have understood that. They didn't have that concept, but they believed in it because the Prophet ﷺ said it. Today we can understand that concept of cloning, but this is a sign for us that even some things that maybe we don't understand how it works, if it's in the Quran or in Hadith, believe in it. And maybe centuries later people will be able to. So the jasad, the body will be rebuilt. So on the Day of Judgment, you will have your soul back into a new body. Right? The Prophet ﷺ in the authentic Hadith, he told us that people will be raised on the Day of Judgment naked and uncircumcised, meaning that their old body will be gone. Now, here the soul and the body are now back together, connected, and you have the Day of Judgment, and you enter Jannah. Go ahead.
Sorry, Shaykh, would the soul have its body on the Day of Judgment? Or will it just be the soul? Would it be physical?
There will be a body.
There will be a
A
body.
recreated body. So it will be a new body. Right? Because your body deteriorated, but from the small tip that was left, Allah will bring you back a new body, and your soul and your body will be there on the Day of Judgment. On the Day of Judgment, the punishments and the enjoyment for the believers and the hardship for the disbelievers will be felt by both the body and soul. Right? When you enter, may Allah protect us, the hellfire, for example, for the disbelievers, their soul and body will enter. But their body will be such that it doesn't go away. Like even if it burns, it recreates and you feel the pain again. And those that enter Jannah, may Allah make us from them, they will enter with the body and soul, but that body will not deteriorate ever. Like even in this worldly life, you get cut, you get, things like that. But in Jannah, you don't have any pain. You don't have any suffering. You don't lose anything. And your soul and your new body that's in Jannah will exist in Jannah forever and ever. Kuwait has put together a book of fatwa. It's 54 volumes. It's really nice, but it's by alphabet. So if you go to Ruh, it gives you all the ayat and ahadith and ahkam with it as well.
SubhanAllah. So that brings the end of section 2, and this will be the final section. So this is just more controversial questions. Some people have said some crazy stuff. So I wanted to get your take on it. So there's a TikTok da'i, but he said something that was concerning, and I wanted to get your take on it.
Okay.
He said that the people that believe skin fade is Qaza, they are extremists.
Okay. So Qaza is to shave a part of the head and leave part of it. Rasulullah forbidden in the hadith. Young boy who had shaved a part of his head and left part of it, Rasulullah said either shave it or leave it, right? So that's the first thing, right? Now, a skin fade, I believe, is that they shave a part of the head and they leave part of it, is qaza. Somebody holding that view being an extremist doesn't make any sense, because ulama of the past have held that view. And obviously, they were great scholars. Now, even if you disagree with a stance, as long as it has evidence in the Quran, Hadith, it's not your right to say, oh, you're an extremist for it. This is like the Western mindset, right? Now, if somebody goes past the boundaries of Sharia, like they make takfir on the Muslim that is not deserving of it, that is extreme, and we forbid it. But Qaza is not making takfir. It's not saying somebody's kafir. Doesn't make sense, right? So many early scholars, and from the early time till our time, have said that when you shave a part of head and you leave a part of it, it's qaza and it's haram. Now, some of the a'imma and ulama took it to be makruh. They said it was disliked, not haram. Some explained it in a different way. They said that the haircut that the child had was resembling certain non-Muslim pagan tribes, and that's why the problem. But you're kind of stretching it. That's kind of you're reading into it, but we don't see in evidence and so on.
In respects to what you said, it was a beautiful point. You said that some scholars deemed it to be makruh based upon an explanation saying that this was a certain tribe of people doing this type of hairstyle. So skin fade was probably a thing about 15 years ago. We kind of grew through football, lesbians. These are the type of things that I started with. This is where you first started to see it in the public eye. So would it still then, even if it wasn't 100%, or if there was a difference of opinion whether it was makruh or haram, would it not still count as imitating of the kuffar?
Well, again, imitating kuffar is haram, right? So if somebody gets a skin fade in imitation of lesbians or punk rock and rollers and mohawk or footballers or hooligans or rappers or whatever else, imitation of kuffar is haram. The Prophet said, "Man tashabbaha qawmin fahuwa minhum." Whoever tries to resemble a people is from them. But that has to do with niyyah too, right? So that's a different issue. At the same time, if somebody gets a haircut where a part of the hair is shorter than the other part, that's not considered qaza. Because at times, even if you were to cut your hair at one length, like Rasulullah did, the bottom of the hair will be shorter than what starts on the top of the head. So all of the hair doesn't have to be exact same length. That's another misconception. So you can have maybe a little bit shorter on the side and a little bit longer on top, as long as it doesn't become like as if you're imitating qaza. Because even to imitate haram is haram, right? Now, if you take it to be makruh or haram, either way it's not okay. Like makruh doesn't mean go ahead and go do it. Like this is the difficult thing some people don't understand.
This question is something that was probably one of the first issues that I came with when it came to the Dawah, and I was straight away, probably a week into starting to practice Islam, the first time I ever got called a Wahhabi. So it was literally about a week in, okay, and at this stage I had never known who this was, what they're referring to or anything like that, but it derived from the opinion that I took that birthdays are haram.
Okay.
Now obviously this is a problem in regards to a whole sect of people that celebrate the Mawlid and the birthday of the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. So Mawlid, that is the question. What is your take?
So let's take a step back first, because Mawlid or birthdays have nothing to do with Wahhabi and not Wahhabi. Like, I don't even know what that word Wahhabi means, like whatever. But birthdays are not an Islamic concept to begin with. In fact, many of the early church fathers condemned it even. Understanding the true teachings of Jesus, they condemned birthdays. In fact, the purists or Puritans that left your country, the United Kingdom, and came to the United States, also didn't celebrate it, and they condemned it. And if you go online, you can see where they used to have write-ups about Christmas and birthdays being forbidden. And many Christian sects who try to practice their religion, like the Jehovah's Witnesses, also condemn birthdays. So this idea of if you don't celebrate birthdays, you're Wahhabi, is just stupidity, right? Now, let's take it to Mawlid. I don't think this should have anything to do with any sect. This is a very simple issue. Is the Mawlid celebration, Eid al-Milad al-Nabi, mentioned in the Quran? No, right? Anybody who tries to stretch it to like Allah honored the Prophet to mean Mawlid, like that just, it's like, I don't know what you're doing, right? But there is no clear reference in the Quran. Now, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we have every documentation from his life, how he went to the bathroom, how he slept, how he ate, what he wore. There are books, Shamal Muhammadiyya and Shamal al-Tirmidhi, that go over everything, even Suyuti has Shamal Muhammadiyya as well, which is Shamal al-Nabawiyya and all this. So many books that they go over every aspect of the Prophet, how he looked and everything, right? In 63 years, 40 years before Nabuwah and 23 years afterwards, did the Prophet ever celebrate the Mawlid? Never. He fasted on Monday and Thursday. I don't know how you take that to throwing a party once a year. Like I don't know how people could be that foolish.
There was a speaker recently that said that the Prophet, he didn't bring he brought the hadith of where the Prophet Muhammad said that my birthday was on a Monday when he was talking about fasting.
He didn't say my birthday, he said he was born on a Monday.
Sorry, my date of birth, but obviously they tried to spin it. But the other evidence that he brought that he didn't provide a reference for, and I asked for a reference and it never came, but I just wanted to ask if you ever came across it, is that the Prophet sacrificed the animal on the day of his birth.
No, he did not. The Prophet did perform the aqiqah for himself. Right? And that's because the aqiqah was not done for him. So he did it. And that is the Islamic ruling. If your aqiqah was not done, it's once in your lifetime, you do that. It's not that you're doing it for your birthday. It's that, as we know, Islamically, you do the aqiqah. The aqiqah is not done on the birthday, too. Most of it mentioned 7 days. It can be done later or earlier as well, as Usman did for Hassan Hussein radiallahu anhu. But again, the point there being, why do we need to stretch things he mentioned he was born on a Monday. He didn't even mention what day he was born, like the 12th or 10th of Rabiul Awwal. That's why the ulama of Tariq don't agree on this. Many said the 12th of Rabiul Awwal, many said the 10th of Rabiul Awwal, many others said 9th and 7th and so on. Why? Because it had nothing to do with worship. I mean, is there any doubt when Eid al-Adha is? No, right? Is there any doubt when Eid al-Fitr is?
No.
1st of Shawwal, right? When Ramadan is? Eid al-Adha and Dhul-Hijjah. Why? Because that has to do with worship. When the Prophet is born, ﷺ, had nothing to do with worship, so the Prophet never mentioned it. And ulama didn't even come to a consensus even from a historical perspective. Now 63 years, the 12th Rabiul Awwal came and left. At least once Rasulullah could have said, hey, today's the day, let's throw a party, let's get together, sing some nasheed, eat some gulab jamun or laddu or whatever. Never. Right? Okay. When Rasulullah died from this worldly life, right? And now the time of Abu Bakr came, and Umar, and Uthman, and Ali, radiallahu anhum, who loved the Prophet. The Sahaba loved the Prophet ﷺ. Did any of them celebrate it?
No.
Right? No lambs being slaughtered,
No,
not his wives, and Aisha radiallahu anha, his most beloved person in the world, who loved him, whose lap his head was in when he passed away. Did she celebrate it? No. Okay, if we look at all of the Sahaba, we have more than 120,000 that were there and so on. Did any of them celebrate it? No. Okay. The greatest Imma, that's why I'm saying nothing to do with Wahhabi and this and that. The greatest scholars of this Ummah in fiqh, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, the four Imma after whom the four madahib are mentioned, did any of them celebrate it? If this was a part of the deen, how come nobody recognized it in the best generations? Okay, the greatest scholars of hadith, Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Ibn Majah, An-Nisa'i, Tirmidhi, Abu Dawood, Ibn Khuzaymah, Ibn Hibban, Imam Ahmad, again, hey, did they celebrate it?
No.
The greatest scholars in tafsir, Imam al-Tabari, like early scholars, right? Those scholars that put together Sulaiman al-Muqatil and so on, did they celebrate it? So how come for hundreds of years nobody in the Ummah understood the deen? This is ridiculous, right? This came from Muslims seeing a mistake that was in the Christians and copying it. The Christians brought the pagan idea of Saturnalia into their religion to celebrate the birthday of Jesus, which was not his actual birthday, the 25th of December. Peace and blessings be upon him. They brought this bid'ah into their religions, and Muslims hundreds of years after the Prophet, seeing them celebrating it, said, hey, why don't we do this too? And they brought this bid'ah into this ummah, and the great a'imma and ulama of the early generations, till our time, those who follow them in righteousness have condemned it. It is a bid'ah. We do not innovate in our religion. It's got nothing to do with Wahhabi or Shafi or Hanbali or Deobandi or this or that. It has to do with sticking to the religion as practiced by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam.
Who is your favorite da'i?
I don't know. It's a good question because
okay, how about this?
The thing is, I know a lot of du'at personally.
That's why.
And if I pick one, then it's going to offend others.
What if I said, who has, if you was to, no wait, what's the way that it would be heartbreaking for someone?
To be honest, I look up to scholars a lot more.
Of course. But who do you think is...
And if you were to ask me who is my favorite scholar, that would also be a very difficult question for me to answer. Of course, the Sahaba are above everybody else. I mean, Sahaba, I love, not just Umar and Khalid and Walid radiallahu anhum that are famous, but many Sahaba like Abu Darda and Suhaib al-Rumi and Tamim al-Dari, who are not as well known or very beloved to me, and many Sahaba that hardly anybody's read their biographies, like Sa'id ibn Zayd, who was one of the 10 Mubashara, but nobody knows about him, and Ukasha radiallahu and those are beloved, and obviously Abu Dujanas and Hamza radiallahu and Aisha radiallahu and Khadija radiallahu and Fatima radiallahu, Hassan Hussein radiallahu anhuma. I love all of them. After that generation, meaning after the Sahaba, again, there's so many amazing, but if you had to pick one, I would say Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, not because just Hanbali fiqh or so on, but really because of the stance he took against the Mu'tazila and the Aqidah of Islam and the hardships that he went through, the mihna, the trial, and his amazing abilities in being one of the greatest scholars of hadith ever to live, collecting the largest early work in hadith, memorizing, a million ahadith, much more than Bukhari and other great scholars of hadith, and also being a great imam in fiqh. I mean, the madhab of the Hanabila based on him, and being very firm, and his ability to control his desires and be firm in the face of hardships, and even not take any monetary compensation for it and so on, no doubt. If you were to push forward, then I would say one of the greatest scholars and one of my favorite scholars, and Shaykh al-Islam Muwaffaquddin Ibn Qudama. Ibn Qudama was a mujahid. He fought against the Crusaders alongside with the armies or with Salahuddin Ayyubi. He wrote the book called Al-Mughni with Sheikh Ibn Baz. When he was asked what is the greatest fiqh book ever written, he said Al-Mughni of Ibn Qudama. He wrote Lum'at I'tiqad, amazing creedal work about Aqidah that I taught, and I think it's one of the best works ever written in the subject. He wrote in the Ulum of Hadith. He wrote in even Mukhtasar Minhaj al-Qasidin and Tazkiyah and so many beautiful things. A very underrated alim, in my opinion, Muwaffaquddin Ibn Qudama. And if you were to forward on from him, then Shaykh Islam Taqiyuddin Ibn Taymiyyah and Shaykh Islam Ibn al-Qayyim, his student. I mean, again, you can't just go one scholar, you gotta go by generations, then Ibn Rajab and so on. All the way to Shaykh Ibn Uthman, who's one of my favorite scholars that are from the recent scholars because of his well-roundedness in fiqh and hadith and aqidah and so on. And his work, Sharh al-Mumti', I think is one of the greatest fiqh works written in that generation. And his ability to make easy for us to understand complicated sciences and so on. In our time, my own personal teachers like Shaykh Abu Muhammad Amin al-Abshawari and Shaykh Abdul Salam al-Rustami, I'm going to be biased because I had time with them and I found them to be amazing.
Do they have videos online?
Shaykh Abdul Salam, he passed away, there may be some videos of him online, but Shaykh Aminullah is very strict against pictures, so he doesn't have videos online.
Wow.
Yeah, he's very staunch. He takes the Shaykh Albani fatwa on this one. No videos, no electronic
no recordings,
pictures. There's audios.
There's audios?
A lot of audios, yeah. But they're in Pashto, so.
Oh,
he does have some writings in Arabic. But I mean, that's gonna Shaykh Ibn Uthman. There's a lot of videos, and I think he's one of the great scholars, mashallah. Yeah.
Should women get education?
Avoided that subject pretty well. Not kidding.
You know why? Because I know it's like coming to nowadays, it's like even pushing more the question. I feel like it's crazy.
It's a very difficult question because like Ahmed Didat had his own style. He was amazing, but
problems.
When he was really active, I wasn't really in the scene, so it's hard to say, And then Dr. Zakir Naik obviously took it to another level and did an amazing job. But again, that's not really how I got into that. I wasn't really through that. I mean, I was on the street dawah scene, and then a lot of the du'at that are active today, what if I mention them and then tomorrow they fall off? So as Ibn Mas'ud radiallahu anhu says, look at those that are passed away, not look at those that are alive and so on. So, inshallah, all of the du'at that are giving da'wah on the Quran and Sunnah, I love them.
That's an amazing response. Should women get education?
Well, I think this is quite ridiculous that this is even being discussed. Of course, women should get education. Islam has always encouraged knowledge, whether it's for men or women. Al-ilm farida ala kulli Muslim, the knowledge is obligation upon every Muslim, includes women, obviously. Now, of course, what is obligatory is to get Islamic knowledge, right? Of course, we cannot say that every man and every woman has to learn astrophysics, right? But every man and woman, Muslim man and woman, should strive to seek Islamic knowledge that is necessary for them. So of course women should seek knowledge. Past that, we know from the example of the Salaf al-Salihin, the Sahaba and others like Aisha radiallahu anha was proficient in knowledge, not just Quran and Hadith and so on, but even Ansab, the biographies and the history and the lineages of the tribes, like her father Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu. So that's, even though that's not actually like from the Islamic ulum of like tafsir and fiqh and mustalah al-hadith and all that, qira'at and so on, but it is a knowledge and she was very proficient in it. Past that, we look at the likes of Fatima al-Makkiyya and others who were great scholars who did amazing work for the ummah and so on. So I think it's an oxymoron to think that we can encourage knowledge with all these ayat and ahadith and then say women don't need knowledge. Like, I don't understand that. Having said that, we don't want to compromise the principles of hijab either. We're not saying that we want our sisters to be taking off the hijab or mixing with men or doing things that Allah has made haram on them to learn something that's not obligatory on them. You know, because the hijab obviously is obligatory.
Sheikh, I have 2 more questions.
Yes.
One will be quite easy, and then one will be
They'll
the
both
first.
be easy. Go ahead. Inshallah.
Where is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala?
And it's very easy. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says about himself, Ar-Rahman ala al-arsh istawa. If he says that about himself, why would I say something different?
Is it above the throne? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, established above the throne.
Okay.
Again, how? Allah knows best. But that's what he said about himself. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam also told us that Allah comes down to the last sama, the last sky, in the last part of the night, which obviously is different in different parts of the world. And Allah does that as well. Why? Because Rasulullah said so. How? Allah knows best. Allah is qadir on everything. We don't say about Allah except what Allah said about himself or the Prophet ﷺ has conveyed to us from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We believe in Allah, His sifat, His attributes, as He has told about Himself, without asking how, without delving into, well, could this be or could that be, or maybe this or maybe that, or maybe it means it's not. He said it, we believe in it.
SubhanAllah. Very clear cut, to be honest. There was one brother that mentioned something, and obviously, like how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, day and night changes for everyone. And Allah says that He comes to the level 7 to answer the dua in a way that befits His Majesty. However, the brother tried to spin it and kind of manipulate the question and saying that obviously every samawat, when the Prophet Muhammad made his way up, they were in a samawat. So the first thing that he's trying to say is that the prophets are already in these places, which I'm not too sure, so maybe you collaborate. The second thing is, if they're above these places and Allah descends to the lowest heaven, does that mean that these prophets are, a'udhu billah, but above Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So those were the 2 points that I was...
The first point is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala brought them there to meet the Prophet. It was special for him, right? Because his journey was something historic, right? Secondly, we don't get into all of this. Right? If Allah said He descends, He descends. How? Allah knows best. If Allah put them in those samawat, they were in those samawat, that's it. It is not from the way of the Salaf al-Salihin or the Sahaba to sit here and go, if this, then what about this to this? We don't get into it. Because that's getting into the how of it. Right? We do not get into the kayfiyah of it. If Allah said it, if the Prophet said it, we believe in it as it is. And whoever has a problem with it can ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the Day of Judgment.
Inshallah. When I first met you 2 years ago, about 2 years ago, I sent you the video when I first got a chance to meet you. And subhanAllah, I made a dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bring a righteous companion in my life because I had nobody. So Jazakallah khair for sticking about in my life. I asked you that day, Shaykh, what would be the best advice for me when it comes to like starting the dawah and being more involved in what I'm doing. As you've seen, like you've come visited me after all this time, I have tried a lot. Is there any further advice that you could give me?
Alhamdulillah, my advice to myself first and you, which is consistent, not something new, which is that always stick to the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Always know that Allah sees you and Allah hears you and Allah will take you to account for what you do. So your da'wah, your ilm, your everything should be in line with the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because as you get better known or as your da'wah grows, a lot of temptations will come your way to sell out, to water down, to this, to that. So be careful and have the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Secondly, ittiba' sunnah, to stick to the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We don't give da'wah because we're so intelligent. No, we follow the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Our da'wah is based on the Quran and the sunnah and the way of the Salaf al-Ummah. We obey the sunnah, we don't innovate, right? So don't think, oh, I'm going to come up with this new thing. No, stick to the sunnah, right? Of course, we use technology because that's not ibadah in itself. It's a means, right? We give out pamphlets. Even the Prophet ﷺ, he had letters sent. We speak to people in the street, as the Rasul used to speak in Mawsim al-Hajj to the kuffar and so on. So we stick to the sunnah even if the technological aspect changes. The way of the Prophet stays the same. And lastly, be very careful with ikhlas, your sincerity, because that is something that gets tempted as online presence and popularity and people recognizing you grows. And there's advice to myself to always stay sincere for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Never let money or popularity or the fear of being cancelled or the acceptability or deniability from some of the parts of the community influence your judgments. Your judgment should only be based on what does Allah want from me, what is the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Continue what you're doing. Da'wah is not, it's not like a rocket and you go up and down. No, you try to stay consistent. Of course, there are going to be times when you're going to have setbacks, but keep on going, whether it's street da'wah, whether it's online, whatever it is. When you have istiqamah, when you're steadfast, you grow. So we ask Allah to protect you and increase you and accept you.
Ameen. Sheikh, I just wanted to say that, when Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu was told by the Quraysh in a mocking way that the Prophet ﷺ went above the samawat and everything, and his response was, if the Prophet said, I believe it, and then there was no judgment. That's kind of the attitude I have with my brothers, especially you. I love you for the sake of Allah, and I've always had that attitude towards you, and no matter what anyone says, then I will always take your word over everything. And I believe your sincerity, and Jazakallah khair for the dawah that you do. And I'm sorry I praised you so much.
Barakallah feek. May Allah love you as you love me for His sake, and may Allah protect you and your family and your da'wah. And again, our love is for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we hope that it's something that will be a means of having your skill on the Day of Judgment be heavy in the scales of Ar-Rahman.
And the last thing, Shaykh, if you could just say, is there anything that the brothers and sisters can do to help the people in Palestine, not just Palestine, all the Muslims across the world, and even non-Muslims that are being oppressed? Is there any specific dua or something we could do to help them?
So as far as specific dua, we go back to the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and he used to recite Qunut al-Nazila in his salawat when there was a calamity on the Ummah. And our masjid, we started this in all 5 salawat, and we have it going on till today. And until the suffering of the people in Gaza is over, we will continue, inshallah. So we ask everybody to revive that sunnah, Qunut al-Nazila, in your salah. And if you don't know how to do it, Google it, you can find it, inshallah. Secondly, I think it's very important for our brothers and sisters, especially those with social media, to raise their voice for the people of Palestine and for every oppressed people around the world. So the mainstream media wants to hide this genocide and what's going on, but you can raise your voice. You can post about it, you can take clips about it. At minimum, you can take du'ats, videos, and make clips and post about it. Lastly, we need to find a way to improve our ummah, especially to then fix these situations in the long term. And not just Palestine, but the whole ummah situation. And I think the first step of that is unity. We need to leave our differences aside, nationalism and social classes and all that nonsense, and come together on the Quran and on the Sunnah and the way of the Salaf al-Ummah, Imam Abu Hanifa and Imam Malik and Imam Shafi'i, Imam Ahmad, and the great scholars there, and stand together and be firm together so that we can respond to such atrocities in a united manner where we can be productive in it. And that starts by putting down your ego and getting involved. So how many Muslims that are watching this or that are still out drinking alcohol and partying, and you are a part of the problem. And for you to leave those sins and come together will be part of the solution. Yes, we know leaders and we know others, but we can't influence that. But we can influence our personal behavior. So that's where we need to start.
It's something beautiful that you taught me as well. I listened to the life of Umar bin Qaza, radiallahu anhum, near to the end of his life, when he was dying and he had been stabbed in Salah. He's still worried about upholding the Sunnah, and the boy, he told him to raise his trousers above his frame. And now, the way that the Sahaba handled stuff and never forgoed the Sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad is the reason why they were successful, even in their small, and why we're weak and we're not.
There's a saying, they said the Sahaba were successful because they did something because they knew it to be Sunnah. And we are failures because we leave things saying it's just Sunnah.
And on that note, Shaykh, I'm going to get you home.
Jazakallah khair, barakallah feekum, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum.